Hey everybody, my name is Noah Oki. I'm a cybersecurity major. I'm a fourth year cybersecurity major, going to graduate next year. I'm currently in the MSIT Accelerated Master's program, and my project today will be about the implementation of enterprise security within the cloud, or the cloud, implementing the cloud and cloud computing within enterprise security environment and network. Main reason why I decided to do this project would be mainly because my co-op this summer in Eli Lilly, I will be um, conducting a project with the Eli Lilly medical team to kind of start um, pushing their medical data through the cloud. And my essentially my project and job would essentially be to help find the risks associated with any cloud, essentially find the risks associated with the cloud, find the best security policies and practices involved in the cloud, and try to help it and just help them implement the project of start migrating their data to the cloud. So this is probably the main reason why I've done this project. So what is the cloud? Essentially, it's the direct use of computing resources without direct management of the user. So instead of actually having that server or having that piece of infrastructure to actually manage, all you're doing is just calling it from a vendor or a provider over the internet. You're not actually you're not actually having the infrastructure or the software or even the platform. You're just using it for your advantage with a fee, of course. Again, a delivery of service over the internet. So instead of having again, like I said, instead of needing an actual server based in your company or your organization, you're just calling for that resource, whether you're using resources such as AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, things like that. So essentially, that's what cloud computing comprises of for the most part. History of the cloud. This can be dated back to the 1960s with projects, especially associated with the military, and from there it started going to a more scientific start. It started from a military platform, or at least the military was looking for a use of dual communication that more than one person can access data at a time. And from there, you have things such as ARPANET being created, and you have projects from DARPA and MIT starting to work to build something of a foundation. So, like ARPANET, which is the kind of the foundation of the internet, or of a lot of these projects we're starting to see today, ARPANET is the foundation. And you'll start seeing, especially going later in the 2000s, how that progression has kind of increased. So why do we use the cloud? For one, it's cheaper. It's actually cheaper. Many organizations find it's a lot cheaper to just use infrastructure as a service instead of having the actual infrastructure. Especially for a very small company here in Cincinnati. It's gonna be kind of hard to have a bunch of data servers, switches, and just a bunch of infrastructure if you don't either have the space and or the employees and the manpower to actually conduct that kind of responsibility. So for the cloud, well, all you gotta do is pay a little fee, and you can have a robust amount of either software or infrastructure to allow you to conduct such activities that you may need. Scalability, you can even scale. Instead of having to buy 20 more servers, data racks, and just so much more materials, you can just scale that up using the cloud through AWS, Azure, things like that. Another reason is availability. If all things goes right, which they don't, but in a world that everything goes right, the cloud is always going to be available. If a natural disaster hits Cincinnati really hard and cut a lot of power, say a natural disaster, hits Cincinnati and power goes out. Your data should be still good because it's not stored in-house and it's over the cloud. So as long as you can regain an internet connection, your data and information still will be there. So, and you can use anywhere. Internet is you can use anywhere. So now we're going to cloud security, which is kind of the meat of this. Cloud. Before my presentation was mainly trying to help you understand what cloud is, but this is where we start understanding the implications of cloud security and how it may be nice to have a cloud computing capability in your organization, but then you have to start thinking of the security risk and security factors. So what is cloud security? Simple terms: security of the cloud. The easiest way I can put this is instead of having to worry about security, instead of having to analyze the security within your in-house servers and in-house network assets, now you have to worry about vendor security. You have to can you trust Amazon, AWS, or Microsoft Azure with your data? Because with cloud computing, you're adding a third party. You're willingly adding a third party into this, and where you're not going to have full 100% security over it. The four pillars of cloud security is visibility and compliance, compute-based security, network protection, and identity security. All of those are now like four added things to a normal security environment. So just keep aware of this when you look into something like this. So the implementation of the cloud into an enterprise environment. So things you might want it to kind of think about is understanding data migration strategies. How are you going to start pushing this data to the cloud? Are you going to do it little by little? Are you going to do it in big chunks? You also got to watch out for data leaks. So you have to develop a very precise and logical method of migrating your data across the internet. That is dangerous. You can't always trust that your data is going to. You have to trust. You have to trust, but you can't always trust where your data is going. You always have to make sure you know where your data is going. Understanding existing IT inventory. So when you're implementing the cloud within your enterprise network, it's really good to know that, hey, I already have this piece of hardware, piece of tool. I don't need any more. I don't need to spend more money with cloud computing to gain more IT resources if I already have it. Compliance issues is a really big one for many. The thing about cloud computing and just using the cloud, there's a plethora of new compliance issues that come around, especially when you're working with the federal government and you have federal data. This is a really big issue. For example, the JEDI project, I think it was given to Microsoft. They now have to follow a bunch of new rules regarding their federal contract data because it's the federal government. So challenges around cloud security. New threat emerges. You're gonna have more new threats. One of the biggest ones I can think of right now is vendor reliance. You can see things like the SolarWinds attack. You can see how even though it wasn't the SolarWinds was the ones compromised, but that affected everyone else. So it might not have, their security might have been decent or good, but SolarWinds was the third party that got attacked, which then spilled it to everyone else. So you always have to you just have to understand that new threats are emerging, especially with cloud computing. You can't just worry about the same threats you had before. You have to now research and kind of threat hunt for new threats that are coming to your company. Access points become vulnerable. Same way. Once you start creating channels to start exporting and importing your data, allowing other individuals to have access to that data, you're creating access points, and now you have to secure. You need to make sure your employees have good password. You have to make sure third party individuals have a good password, are conducting good security practices and doing what they need to do and complying to the rules. That's another really big risk you have to worry about when doing things like this. And like I said before, more channels of attack. You're exposing yourself to new threats once you go into the cloud. Should we use the cloud? Some pros: maximum availability. You essentially should have almost 100% availability if all things go right. Not everything goes right all the time, but if all things go right, you should have maximum availability. Disaster recovery. Again, if a disaster happens to your, main site, you don't have to worry, as long as your data is not held there, or if your data is there, you have a sense of security knowing your data is not there. You can recover it through the cloud. Scalability is very easy. It's very easy to scale up with cloud computing. You can just request a lot more. You can request more servers, request more data nodes, whatever you need to continue the operations of your company. To reduce costs, it's for many a lot cheaper to just borrow essentially infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service without having to do it in-house. Cons: vendor involvement. Now you are sharing responsibility of your data, or you're sharing responsibility now. So you have to trust that your vendor is doing what they're supposed to do, and if not, you can risk a data leak, a data breach, and things like that. The reliance on the internet. You're relying on the internet for your organization now. Depending on what you're putting into the cloud, you are now relying on the internet to do a lot of the functions that you push through. So you always have to remember, if the internet goes down, will you be okay, or can your operation still succeed? And again, new security threats. Again, now you are sharing responsibility with a vendor, which means your vendor gets attacked, like a DDoS attack or any kind of attack. You are sharing that responsibility and you're sharing that impact. It's no going away from that unless you find a way to mitigate that. Unless you find ways to mitigate that threat to your company. So this is my project. Thank you for everybody listening. Please give me any feedback. Would really appreciate any type of feedback and at least recommendations for sure. But that's my project. Thank you for everybody listening.